Her true story from Florida. It all started the day my son looked me in the eye and said, "You ruined our lives. Get out." So I did. I walked out and cut off contact. A week later, I had over 99 missed calls on my phone. The words had hit me, like a punch to the chest, loud and sharp as they bounced down the hallway. I had just moved in, hadn't even opened my suitcase yet, when he stood in the doorway of the tiny guest room. Well, it wasn't really a guest room. It used to be an office. The carpet was a dull beige, and the only window had a flimsy little blind. My suitcase sat still, zipped up by the wall. The pillowcase smelled like laundry detergent, but not like home. He glared at me. "Because of you," he snapped, "my son doesn't even have his own room anymore. How do you not see the problem?" I opened my mouth to say something, but nothing came out. I knew whatever I said would only make things worse. I had only been there 2 hours. I had just said goodbye to everything I'd ever known. My old house, my garden, my church group. I sold the home I'd lived in for 34 years. The place where my son learned to walk, where his father and I painted the hallway yellow one summer, where I buried my wedding ring under the rose bush because it hurt too much to see it after he died. All of that, gone. I sold it all so I could move in with them, so they could take care of me like they said they would. After my small stroke last year, and with arthritis making stairs feel like mountains, they told me they wanted a bigger house, a yard for their kids, and a little space for me. But truthfully, they couldn't afford it. So I did what moms do. I sold my house, cashed the savings my husband left me, and gave them everything. Every penny went into the down payment for this 2-story place in a quiet Florida neighborhood. It had a porch, a so-called guest room, and all kinds of promises. "You'll be part of everything," my son said when we signed the papers. "We'll make it work, but words are easy when you're not the one paying." Now here he was, standing over me, his hands shaking with frustration. "Why did you even come here, Mom?" he asked angrily. "This was supposed to be a fresh start for us, and now we're turning our lives upside down because of you. You're not a queen. You can't just walk in and take over." I stared at him, really looked at him for the first time in years. I saw how tired he looked, how angry he was, how uncomfortable he felt having me there, like I was some unwanted guest who wasn't supposed to still be alive. I glanced at my suitcase, still zipped shut. My sweaters were neatly folded, my slippers tucked in the corner, my medicine bag labeled with black marker. I hadn't brought much, but somehow even that was too much. His wife, Sarah, stood in the kitchen doorway. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. Her silence said it all. I nodded, not at them, but to myself, to remember this moment. "I'll stay out of the way," I said softly. "I'll make it work." He scoffed and turned his back, before I even finished talking. That night I lay on a stiff mattress, listening to the ceiling fan hum above me. From across the hall, I heard my grandson crying, just a soft little whimper in the dark. I heard my son mutter something, then slam a door. No one went to comfort the boy. No one came to comfort me either. I had moved into a house, but not a home. That first night made one thing clear. I had given up the last piece of my independence for an empty promise of belonging, and now I was already being pushed aside. The next morning I got up early. I folded the blankets and tried to make the bed look a little less like a punishment. I unpacked a few things, just to make the room feel less temporary. In the kitchen, Sarah walked past me without a word. The coffee was already made, but not for me. I poured myself a cup anyway, sat quietly at the edge of the table, and looked out at the backyard. My grandson was playing in the grass alone. He didn't have any toys, just a stick and a plastic bucket. When he saw me through the window, he waved. I smiled back, but my heart didn't join in. By lunchtime, I was asked to use the downstairs bathroom only. "It's just easier," Sarah said, "with the kids running around." That night I was reminded, Don't use the dishwasher unless I ask first. By dinner, there were only 4 plates on the table, not 5. Nobody said anything, but the message was loud and clear. I wasn't really part of the family. I was a problem, a burden, something they had to work around. After dinner, I quietly washed my own plate at the sink, alone. Later, as I got ready for bed, I noticed my suitcase had been pushed into the closet. I hadn't moved it. Someone else had. As if even the sight of my things was too much. As if they couldn't stand to be reminded of what I gave up just to be there. I sat on the edge of the bed, took out the little notebook I kept in my purse, a place meant for grocery lists and blood pressure notes, and I wrote, Day 1, my name is Evelyn Parker. I sold my house to buy theirs. And today, I was told I'm key. The reason their son has no room. The next morning, at exactly 10:37 a.m., my phone rang. I was in the laundry room folding towels. No one asked me to. I just wanted to feel useful in a house where I was mostly invisible. I answered on the second ring. A woman's voice said, Mrs. Evelyn Parker? Yes, speaking. This is Marcia with First Federal Bank. I'm just calling to confirm your application for a $215,000 home equity loan submitted last week. We're only missing a few documents to move forward. My heart dropped. My knees went cold. I'm sorry? What? I asked. She repeated, Your loan application, to borrow against the property on Orange Grove Lane. We have your signature, but we still need your tax documents. I didn't sign anything, I said, my voice sharp with confusion. There was a pause. Then she said more carefully, I understand, but your name, social security number, and authorization are all here. Do you want to come into the branch? By noon, I was sitting in a cold, quiet office with buzzing fluorescent lights. The woman slid a stack of printed papers across the desk. I picked them up with trembling hands. There it was, my name, my social, my address, and a signature pretending to be mine. But it wasn't. The P in Parker curled wrong. The slant was off, and I never ever put a period after my middle initial. Whoever signed it didn't know that. But I did. I walked out holding a copy of the forged papers. My hands were only shaking a little, not from fear, from clarity. I knew exactly who had done it, and I knew what I needed to do next. That evening, I helped set the table like I always did. 4 plates, 2 wine glasses. My grandson sat in the corner, tapping away on his tablet. Sarah reheated leftovers. My son walked in late, shirt wrinkled, already looking annoyed. We sat in silence. Lentil stew, Sarah said, like she was offering a peace treaty. No one replied. Halfway through the meal, I calmly placed the papers on the table, neat, unfolded, easy to see. My son looked at them, then looked at me. What's this? He asked, his voice flat. You tell me, I said. He scanned the top page, then the signature. I watched his jaw tighten, just slightly. I got a call from the bank, I said, keeping my voice steady. Apparently, I'm applying for a home equity loan. Silence. Sarah gently set down her spoon. And it turns out, I added, someone used my name. Someone forged my signature. Someone borrowed against my house. Still, he didn't say a word. I wonder, I said slowly, who had access to my social security number, my ID, my trust? My voice was soft, but every word cut like glass. He stood up slowly. What do you want me to say? He snapped. You live here. It's your house. You're part of this family. Part of this family? I repeated. He glared at me. Don't turn this into some kind of pity story, Mom. We're struggling, and you know that. So you forged my name? I asked, louder now. You borrowed against my house, our house, and you forged my name? His fist slammed against the table. The spoon jumped. My grandson flinched. You don't understand what it's like, he shouted. We're drowning here. Sarah's job is hanging by a thread. My credit's ruined, and you—" He paused. I waited. "You just sit here folding towels and judging us." I blinked. The words landed like rocks. "Everything was fine until you moved in." His rage broke open like thunder. "You ruined our lives. Get out!" The room went still. Even the air felt heavy. I stood slowly. Sarah reached out, trying to grab his arm. "Mark, stop," she whispered. But he pulled away. "If the only thing you have left to offer is a loan you won't give," he said, his voice shaking with anger, "then what good are you?" He spat the words out like poison. "Then maybe it would be better if you just died already." The room froze. Even my grandson, busy with his tablet, stopped breathing. But here's what he didn't expect. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even flinch. Instead, I reached into my pocket, pulled out a small black recorder, and calmly pressed the stop button. The blinking red light faded to nothing. His eyes widened. "What's that?" he asked, his voice suddenly tight, unsure. I slid the recorder back into my sweater. "Proof," I said quietly. He stared at me like he didn't recognize me anymore. "You recorded me?" "Yes." "Why?" he asked, anger mixed with fear now. "Because I'm not stupid," I told him. "And this time, I need the world to believe me." Sarah, standing nearby, stepped back slowly. Her face had gone pale. "I'll go," I said. "Tonight, if that's what you want." He scoffed. "Good, pack your things." I nodded. But this time, I smiled. Not out of spite. Not because I was hurt. But because I finally understood. I wasn't the one who had failed this family. They had failed me. And now they were going to learn what happens when the woman they thought was small, broken, and easy to ignore finally stops protecting them. They didn't ask me to leave that night. They didn't need to. Everything in the house told me I was no longer welcome. The next morning, the coffee machine was already brewing when I came into the kitchen, but there was no extra cup left. Out for me. When I reached for the cabinet to grab a mug, Sarah casually blocked it with her hip. "Let me just finish up here," she said, not even glancing at me. I waited 10 minutes. She never moved. That afternoon, the remote control vanished from the living room. My favorite blanket? Accidentally donated to Goodwill. My vitamins? Switched with cheap generic ones that made me sick to my stomach. By the third day, I was no longer allowed to use the kitchen. "It's just easier if we streamline meal prep," Sarah said, eyes never leaving her phone. So I ate cereal in my room, using a plastic bowl, sitting on the edge of my bed. At night, I heard whispers from their bedroom. Sometimes sharp, sometimes exhausted. Once, their door creaked open just enough for me to hear Sarah's voice, soft and cold. "How long do you think she's got left? A year? 2, maybe?" A pause. "I mean, she's already done enough damage." The door clicked shut, and my heart didn't break. It hardened. That night I lay on my bed, staring at the ceiling until the sky turned pink. The next morning, I walked 3 blocks to the drugstore and bought a second voice recorder, small, voice-activated, and easy to hide. It slipped into my coat pocket like a secret. They'd taught me to be invisible. Now I'd use it. The first recording happened by accident. I was sitting at the dining room table, flipping through an old magazine I'd found in the recycling bin, when Mark walked in talking on the phone. His voice was sharp. "No," he said, "just use her name." Again. He paused, then snapped, "She doesn't check her credit. She barely knows how to use the internet. Just use the same signature. It worked last time." I didn't move, didn't breathe. He didn't notice the small recorder blinking inside my knitting bag. When he left the room, I pressed stop. That night, I played it back 3 times. Each word tightened something in my chest. I thought about the little boy I used to bathe in a plastic tub, the child I held through fevers and taught to ride a bike on the gravel road behind our house. Now he was using my identity like a stolen credit card. The next day I bought a backup recorder, just in case. I started keeping a log. Morning. Sarah tells the kids not to talk to Grandma because she's grumpy and mean. Afternoon. Mark slams his office door and mutters, "Useless old woman." Evening. They order takeout and don't even knock. On my door. I wasn't collecting this for a lawyer. I was collecting it for me. So later, if anyone tried to tell me I'd imagined it all, or if I ever started to wonder if maybe I'd been too sensitive, I'd have the truth. On the 7th night, I sat on the closet floor and listened to one recording over and over. Again, Sarah's voice, sharp and careless. She just takes up space. What does she even do all day? Breathe and judge us? Mark laughed. Trust me, the moment she's gone, everything will finally run smoothly. This house feels like a coffin, with her in it. Then, silence. Not angry silence, not regretful silence, just comfort. They were comfortable hating me, and I didn't cry because I was hurt. I cried because I finally saw it for what it was. This wasn't just a bad week. It wasn't stress. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't a generational gap. They didn't love me. They never did. They tolerated me. They used me. They didn't respect me. And now I had proof. The next morning, I walked past them in the hallway with a smile on my face. Not because I had forgiven them, but because I had made up my mind. If they really thought I was invisible, then they'd never see what was coming. In the bottom drawer of my suitcase, I kept an old folder, beat up, tied with a rubber band, and covered in my husband's handwriting. House docs, do not throw out. I hadn't opened it in over a year. But that morning, after yet another lonely breakfast, I sat on the guest room floor and laid the folder out in front of me. The papers were a little yellow with age, but still, in good shape. Deeds, tax bills, insurance records, and right there, in big, bold letters, owner of record, Evelyn M. Parker, no co-signer. No transfer, no shared ownership. This house, the one I lived in, the one they wanted to take from me, was still mine. Not just emotionally or in some wishful way, legally, fully, clearly mine. I stared at that line for a long time. They thought. I had signed it over after we moved. I hadn't. We talked about it, sure, back when we were still pretending to be one big happy family. I remember Sarah sitting beside me on the couch, all polite smiles, showing me printouts of other homes. Mark saying, "It'll be easier if the house is under our names, Mom. Less stress, better for taxes and insurance." I told them I'd think about it. I almost went through with it. But the insurance paperwork needed to be in their names, and since my age gave us a better rate, we put it off. They forgot. Or maybe they assumed I did. I never signed a thing. And thank God I didn't. Because this house, the one they whispered about putting her in, the one I was stuck in like a forgotten prisoner, this house was mine. Paid. For with my money, my name, and years of sacrifice. They didn't own the roof over their heads. They were just guests. And they didn't even know it. I sat with that truth all afternoon. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel mad. Just still, calm. Because real power, when it finally returns after so long, isn't loud. It's steady. It's heavy. It's real. Later that evening, while Mark and Sarah bickered in the driveway over a gallon of milk someone forgot to buy, I picked up the phone. "Hello, is this Thomas Hargrove's office?" I asked the woman who answered. "Yes, it is. May I ask who's calling?" "This is Evelyn Parker. Tom handled my husband's estate. I'd like to speak to him directly." She hesitated. "Of course, Mrs. Parker. One moment." Then I heard his voice, warm, familiar. "Evelyn? Good Lord, it's been a while." "Too long," I said. We hadn't spoken in nearly 15 years, not since my husband passed and Tom helped me sort through the mess that followed. "How can I help?" he asked. "I need to talk about a property. Mine. It's complicated." "I'm listening," he said. So I told him everything. Slowly, carefully. I explained how I sold my old home, put the down payment on this one, and how the mortgage was under my name. I told him how I never signed anything over and what they had assumed I'd done. He was quiet for a second, just long enough to know it mattered. "I'll be in town Friday," he said. "I'll bring a notary. We'll go through everything together." "Thank you," I said. "No need. You're not the first mother to call me about something like this. But you might be the first one ready to do something about it." I hung up and sat there, staring at the phone. Something deep inside me shifted. It wasn't sadness. It wasn't anger. It was resolve. They thought I was too old, too soft, too forgetful to keep track of papers and details, but they forgot who I used to be. I was the woman who worked 2 jobs and still got dinner on the table by 6:30. I was the one who taught their son how to walk without falling. Now I'd teach them something else, how to fall without ever seeing it coming. Some women raised their voices. Me? I just raised an eyebrow, quiet, sharp, enough to say, "Watch what happens next." The morning after I spoke with Tom, I went down to the credit union, somewhere they'd never think to check. I opened a brand new account under my maiden name. I even rented a small P.O. box nearby. Then I moved part of my retirement savings into that account. Quietly, smoothly. No one noticed a thing. That same week, I started taking things out of the house. Not big things, they would have noticed that, but the things that mattered. My husband's cufflinks from the top drawer, the old family locket tucked behind the sewing machine, the antique pie dish my mother gave me when I got married. Bit by bit, I was reclaiming my life, and they had no idea. Little by little, things started to disappear from the shelves and drawers. Not big, obvious things, just the ones that mattered to me. They didn't vanish into thin air. I was taking them to a small storage unit I'd rented 2 towns away. While Sarah thought she was slowly erasing me from this house, I was quietly returning the favor. Next, I went to the bank. I filed an official fraud complaint for the documents they had forged. The woman helping me had gentle eyes. She didn't say much, but I could tell she understood. She looked down, shook her head, and said softly, "Family. Sometimes the worst ones are the ones we raise ourselves." I handed over everything, copies of the forged signature, samples of my real handwriting, and a detailed log of every threatening phone call I'd recorded. That night, I sat on the bed, folding laundry. I played one of the recordings. Mark's voice filled the room, low, bitter. If she'd just died already, we wouldn't have to deal with all this. Then, silence, but not because Sarah was shocked. She didn't say a word, because she agreed. I saved the recording to a USB drive and wrote on it in red ink, "If I die too soon, play this." I made 3 copies. One went to Tom, my lawyer, another into my safety deposit box. The third I stitched into the lining of my coat, close to my heart. A few days later, Tom started the paperwork. First, he filed a cease and desist with the mortgage lender who had started processing the forged loan. That alone sent Mark's plans into a tailspin. Then Tom submitted a sworn statement declaring I was the only legal owner of the house. After that, he helped me draft an emergency will. Not because I was sick, but because it had become clear that they were hoping I might be. The new will was simple. If I passed away naturally, everything would go to charity, a women's shelter I used to volunteer at, and the public library that still had my name on a little plaque in the children's reading corner. Mark and Sarah? They weren't just left out. They were specifically excluded. And if anything happened to me under suspicious circumstances, Tom had full authority to release the recordings and press criminal charges. He didn't ask me if I wanted to go after them for forging the loan. Not yet. He knew I wasn't done. Every step I took was careful. Every polite smile at the dinner table. Every fake thank you when Sarah reheated some sad soup for me. Every time I pretended not to hear their whispering behind my back. They thought I was shrinking. Really, I was stepping back to get a better view. From that distance, I saw the truth. They had no idea who they were dealing with. They thought my age made me weak, but it made me sharper. Sharper than the kitchen knife Sarah once almost handed me blade first. Sharper than the silence Mark wrapped around his guilt. Sharper than their betrayal, because I survived it. And I didn't just survive, I planned. Every plan, every signed document, every backup file, every thread I pulled from the web I tried to wrap me in, brought me one stitch closer to freedom. And this wasn't just about leaving. It was about taking back everything they thought they could steal from me, and more. It happened on a Wednesday. The morning was cool and soft, with dew. The moving truck rolled quietly into the driveway, just as I'd asked. The driver was young, tattooed, and had the kind of eyes that told you he'd seen things and wouldn't be surprised by much. He tipped his cap and didn't say a word, just how I liked it. By 7 a.m., the hallway closet was empty. By 8:15, my suitcases were zipped, stacked, and ready. By 9 o'clock, the last photo of my husband had been wrapped in bubble wrap and placed gently in the front seat of the car waiting for me. I didn't say goodbye, not because I was bitter, because I was done. I had watched this house turn from a dream into a prison. And now? Now it was just a place I used to live. Mark and Sarah weren't home. They'd gone to meet with a financial advisor, probably scrambling to hold together the pieces of their broken little plan. I didn't need them here for the final moment. They'd get the message soon enough. Before I left, I placed a wooden box right in the center of the kitchen table. It was small, but heavier than they'd ever expect. Inside, a printed copy of the deed with my name on it, a formal withdrawal of my... Inside that little wooden box I left on the kitchen table was everything they never thought I had the strength to hold on to. First, a printed copy of the deed, clear as day, naming me as the one and only owner of the house. Then, the full report I'd filed with the bank about the forged loan, complete with signatures, timestamps, and all the proof they thought I wouldn't keep. 2 USB drives were tucked in carefully. One labeled Map Drawer Files, Mark and Sarah. One held all the recordings. The other was a backup. And finally, a letter. I typed it neatly, signed it in blue ink. It said simply, "To whom it may concern. This house no longer belongs to you. It never did." I left that box sitting in the middle of the table, right next to a cold pot of coffee and a pile of unpaid bills. The house didn't feel sad when I left. It felt like it was finally letting out a long, quiet breath, like it was relieved, just like I was. By noon, I was walking into my new home, a clean, bright apartment on the 12th floor of a senior living community overlooking the river. Everything about it felt fresh, peaceful, modern. The front desk clerk handed me the keys and smiled. "Welcome. Home, Mrs. Parker," she said, and for the first time in years I believed it. 12 months of rent, health services, and dining were already paid. Every paper had my name on it, just mine. No tricks, no traps. My signature was mine again, unforced and free. The apartment smelled like lavender. The armchair by the window was soft and deep, like it had been waiting just for me. There was no shouting, no cold stares, no one making me feel small for asking for space or silence or dignity. Just me. And finally, that was enough. That night, I sat by the window with a warm mug of chamomile tea. Below me, the city lights sparkled like fireflies. I pictured the moment they'd walk into the house, expecting the same tired, quiet old woman to be waiting on the couch, folding their towels, fading into the background. Instead, they'd find nothing but dust, empty drawers, bare closets, and that box. A box that didn't scream, but spoke clearly. I didn't run away. I took back what was mine, and I left behind exactly what they deserved. Silence, consequences, and a wide, echoing emptiness where their free ride used to be. It started on the 7th day, 1 missed call, then 2, by lunchtime, a dozen. By the next morning, my phone looked like it had been crying, 99 plus missed calls from Mark. No voicemails, just silence trying to claw its way back into my life. I didn't answer. I didn't block him either. Some things are meant to be seen and felt. Let him see my name lit up on his screen. Let his thumb hover over the call button again and again. Let him sit with the same weight I once carried, those cold, cruel words of his sitting heavy in my heart like stones. I had nothing left to give him, and now he had everything to lose. On the 8th day, a letter arrived, not personal, just official, cold and plain. It was from the law office handling the fraud case. Sarah's name was on it. She'd filed the fake mortgage paperwork using my name. And once her job found out, she was put on leave immediately. By the end of the week, she was unemployed. I didn't celebrate. I didn't feel smug. But I did feel calm. Because when people cross lines, there should be consequences, especially when the person they thought was useless kept all the receipts. The calls didn't stop. Mark tried. Different numbers, sent text after text. We need to talk. It was never supposed to go this far. Please. One message read, "I'm sorry, Mom." But he wasn't sorry for what he'd done. He was sorry he didn't get away with it. Sorry I took back control. And I had no intention of handing it back. So I wrote a reply, but I didn't send it. Right away. I waited until I could read it without shaking, until it didn't make my chest hurt. Then I attached an audio clip, that clip where he said, crystal clear, "If she'd just died already, this would be so much easier." Beneath it, I typed a single sentence. "You were once the child I loved most, but the man you've become, I don't recognize him." Then I hit send and muted the conversation. 2 days later, a voicemail came in. Mark's voice cracked like ice under pressure. "Mom, please, just tell me you're okay." I didn't mean what I said. We were stressed. I was scared. "I shouldn't have forged your name. I know that now. I didn't think you'd really leave." That was the problem, wasn't it? They never thought I'd actually leave, because they never thought I could. To them, I was just a part of the house. Like a faucet, always pouring out money, patience, and love. Always giving, never empty. But they forgot. A mother is not a machine. She can break, she can hurt, and she can walk away. I didn't leave because I hated them. I left because I finally remembered how much I mattered too. And now, they would have to learn that all on their own. Inside was a photograph. It was of me, maybe 10 years ago, standing in the garden behind the old house. I was wearing a wide-brimmed hat, holding pruning shears, smiling without knowing someone was watching. Behind me, blurry but unmistakable, was Mark, much younger, still a teenager, chasing a soccer ball across the grass. Jean had written on the back in her neat, looping script, "You were happy once. You can be again, on your own terms this time." I held that photo for a long while, not crying, just remembering. The good didn't erase the bad, but neither did the bad erase the good. That was the truth I'd taken too long to learn. Both things could live side by side in the same heart and not tear it in two. That night, I wrote Jean back. "Thank you," I said, "not just for the photo, but for being the kind of friend who doesn't look away. I'm well now, more than well. I'm free. I've stopped waiting for the past to explain itself. Some chapters aren't meant to make sense. They're just meant to be turned." Then I slipped the photograph into a frame and placed it beside the window, next to a potted lavender plant and a stack of paperbacks I'd been meaning to read. Now, some mornings, I wake before the sun. I make tea and watch the world stretch. Awake. I write letters. I plan trips. I sit with myself and feel no need to apologize for the quiet. No one calls me selfish for wanting peace. No one needs me to be less so they can be more. Samuel writes every week. Sometimes we call. Sometimes we don't. But always when I think of him, I smile. I don't know what the future holds, but I no longer fear its uncertainty. Because for the first time in my life, I'm not surviving out of obligation. I'm living by choice. And when people ask how I found the strength, I tell them the truth. It started the moment I remembered I didn't need permission. Not to leave, not to heal, not to become someone new, just to begin. I found a handwritten note the other day. It said, "Dearest Evelyn, Mark came by. He asked for your address. I didn't give it to him, but I told him something else. Your mother is doing better than I've ever seen her." Then it added, "He looked like someone just told him the sun would never rise again. Just thought you'd like to know. Love, Jean." I didn't laugh. I didn't cry. I just sat there, letting it all sink in. That moment hit different. Something shifted. He had lost the one person who always believed in him. And for the first time, I realized I didn't need him to be anything anymore. These days, I spend my time painting. I don't make much money, but I'm happy. My roses still look like red cabbages, and sometimes my clouds come out looking like lumpy potatoes, but they make me laugh. I picked up French again, just because I felt like it. I've even started baking with almond flour, though I can't stand the stuff, just to see what happens. I've become the woman I always wished my mother could have been. Not because life handed it to me, but because I finally stopped waiting for someone to let me be. I didn't take revenge. I didn't yell. I didn't shame anyone. I just quietly took back what was mine. My name, my space, my peace, my kindness. And I gave it to the one person who truly deserved it. Me. Have you ever felt like people only loved you when you were giving? Like when your hands were full, cooking dinner, paying bills, solving problems, everyone needed you. But the moment you stopped, the moment you needed something, it was like you disappeared. The room got quieter, the smiles faded, the warmth in their eyes turned cold. That kind of love? It's not real if it only shows up when you're useful. If you've ever sat at a dinner table that used to feel like home and suddenly felt like a stranger. If you've ever laid awake at night thinking, did they love me or just what I did for them? You are not alone. And more importantly, you are not done. Your worth doesn't wear out with time. It doesn't shrink when your hands are tired or your back starts to ache. It isn't based on how much you do for others or how long you kept quiet just to keep the peace. Your worth is in your memories, in your stillness, in the way you always knew the truth and waited for the right moment to say it out loud. Because being quiet doesn't mean being weak, and real power, it doesn't need to shout. Sometimes the strongest person in the room is the one they never saw coming, the gentle one, the one who always smiled. The one they thought they could keep small until she stood up and walked away with everything they thought they had control over. We've been called selfish for saying no. We've been told to be grateful, to stay quiet, to know our place. But here's the thing. Dignity doesn't ask for permission, and kindness, real kindness, is a gift, not a debt. If someone abuses it, we can take it back. So if you're reading this and you're carrying a story, a betrayal you've never said out loud, a time you gave your all and no one even said thank you, a moment when someone you loved forgot you were human, please remember, it's not too late, not to speak, not to heal, not to start over, not as who you were for them, but as who you've always been, deep down, for yourself. You're not just a mom, not just a grandma, not just the extra chair at the table. You're the main character. You hold the stories, you've seen the truth, and when you speak, the world listens. So pull up a chair, turn up the volume, and listen close. Because when a grandma speaks, it's not just a story, it's justice, wrapped in memory, and finally set free.